Today we are going to learn about using square roots to solve quadratic equations. So we need to remember that to square something and to take the square root are inverse operations to one another, which means that they're going to undo each other. So today we're going to be isolating things that are being squared and then taking the square root of both sides of an equation to solve them. And if you don't remember what inverse operations are, go ahead and put our operations that undo each other if you prefer. So when we look at the three problems that we have written here, when we have x squared is equal to 16, remember we square root both of those things, and there are two numbers that will fulfill this equation, positive 4 and negative 4, because remember 4 times 4 is 16, and negative 4 times negative 4 is also positive 16. You can use that notation, or if you want to write them out with the word or in between, that's fine. And then when we look at x squared is equal to 0, we're only going to end up with one answer here. We'll just have x is equal to 0. And then when we have x squared is equal to negative 9, when we try and take the square root of that, if you were to type it into a calculator, it would say error, but there's no number times itself that's going to equal a negative number. So this we're going to have no solution. So our steps are going to be, when equations are already in the form x squared is equal to d, we can solve by taking the square root of both sides. So the first thing we will do is we will isolate whatever is being squared. Sometimes that's a variable, sometimes that's going to be something in parentheses. Once we've taken the square root, or we're going to take the square root, and then once we have taken the square root of both sides, we're going to write two equations and then solve both of them. And the two equations will be equal to the positive and the negative root. This is a section that people that like to skip over showing their work tend to make a lot of mistakes. So it's going to be extra important that you're going through the steps with us. Just to generalize those three problems that we have written there, x squared equals 16, 0, and negative 9, we're going to just generalize. When we have something, when d is positive, we're going to always have two solutions. When d is negative, we will have no solution because we can't take the square root of a negative number. And when d is 0, we will only have one solution because the square root of 0 is just 0. We don't have a positive and a negative 0. So we're going to go ahead and do three examples to show you what that means. So when we look at number 1, we have 2x squared is equal to 8. First we need to get x squared by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. Whoa, my board is all messed up. Woohoo! We're going to divide both sides by 2. We have x squared is equal to 4. So now we can see that we have x squared equal to a positive number, so we are already thinking we're going to have two solutions. So Miss Cash is writing here very patriotic, red, white, and blue. We're going to go ahead and have x is equal to 2 and negative 2. And again, you can use that notation, or if you want to write it with the word or, we do not mind. Okay, when we look at number 2, we have m squared minus 18 is equal to negative 18. So to isolate m squared, we're adding 18 to both sides. We have m squared is equal to 0. We see that our thing being squared is just equal to 0, so we know we're just going to have one solution. When we square root both sides, we just have m is equal to 0. And then our final case here, b squared plus 12 equals 5. We're going to subtract 12. We're left with b squared is equal to a negative 7. So if you see this, you can stop right here and say no solution, or if you need to go ahead and take the square root and then have your calculator remind you when you try to find the square root of a negative 7 that you have no solution, that is fine. So we get an error on the calculator, or we just know that we can't square root a negative number, so we're going to have no solution. All right, let's go ahead and try a couple more examples here. 4x squared is equal to 9. So we see we have to first undo the 4 times x squared by division. X squared is equal to 9/4. Oh my god, a fraction! So we go to take the square root of both sides. And we remember to take the square root of 9/4 is the same as the square root of 9 divided by the square root of 4. And since those are both perfect squares, we're not going to have any trouble with this. So we can say that x is equal to positive 3/2 or negative 3/2. All right, when we look at number 5, this looks like a two-step equation from the beginning of the year or pre-algebra. We just have the x squared. So first we're going to move the minus 11. We have 3x squared is equal to 18. We'll divide by 3. We get x squared is equal to 6. When we go ahead and we see that we have not a perfect square, we already know that we're going to get an irrational number. So we're going to need to use a calculator, and when we take the square root of this, the calculator is only going to return the positive answer. So we're going to need to know that it's going to be positive or negative. And when we take the square root of 6 on the calculator, we're going to get 2.45 and then a whole bunch of other numbers. We're going to go ahead and write that we always want to round to the nearest hundredth, which means 2 decimal places. It's going to be very important that you are rounding accurately. Ooh, very popular right now, getting some text messages. So you're going to go ahead and round to the nearest hundredth, 2 decimal places. Okay, so far we've only had x being the thing that is being squared. We're going to look at these last 2 examples that are a little bit more complicated. So we're trying to isolate what's being squared, and what's being squared in number 6 is the x minus 4. So we're going to first try and isolate that. So we're going to divide by 6 on both sides. And now we're left with x minus 4 squared is equal to 7. This is when we're going to take our square root. So when we take the square root of both sides, we're going to have to write our 2 equations. And you'll need to use a calculator to take the square root of 7. So we'll have x minus 4 is equal to positive 2.65. And our other equation is x minus 4 is equal to the negative 2.65. And once we have those 2 equations, we can very easily solve them. And we will get our 2 solutions. We'll have x is equal to positive 6.65, or when we add 4 to negative 2.65, we'll have x is equal to 1.35. So these solutions are different because we don't just have a positive and negative, we have 2 separate answers, okay? Number last, let's go ahead and we see x plus 6, the quantity is the thing that's being squared, so we need to isolate that. So we'll divide by 4. We have x plus 6 squared is equal to 8. And we'll go ahead and we'll take the square root of both sides. And this is when we write and we break into our 2 separate equations. So x plus 6 is equal to 2.85, or 83, excuse me, or x plus 6 is equal to a negative 2.83. And we're getting that 2.83 after we take the square root of 8 on a calculator. Okay, so once we go ahead and we solve those 2 equations, we're going to get our 2 solutions. So we have negative 3.17 and negative 8.83. So there's our 2 answers, and again we can see that we have 2 separate answers that are not opposites of one another, and these are both negative. Okay, for the rest of your assignment, we want you to try these 7 problems, those 6 problems that are written there. It will be helpful if you write your answers on those lines provided, and in the event that you forgot your worksheet at school, you can go ahead and copy these down and do them in your notebook.